LinkedIn.
Yeah, it is called blank page syndrome. It's the one I use.
So, this syndrome, this inability to post on LinkedIn, is what we're going to discuss today and how you can overcome that writer's block. But first, we need to start, Justin, with just something simple, like maybe making a comment. What do you think?
Yeah. So if we're talking about writer's block, really we're talking about posting. If we're talking about posting, we're talking about visibility. And one of the most effective, easy ways to get more visibility to your profile is by commenting. We talked about, what should your profile look like? If you need the link, let us know. We did that session last week, right? Optimizing your profile. Now you got it all set up. Let's talk about like visibility. Specifically, we'll start with commenting, like you said, Nancy. So commenting is a fantastic way to get visibility. You don't even have to post because what you can do is it's actually like a 3 or 4 for 1. It allows you to get in front of your first degree network because your comments will occasionally show up in the feed of others, just like a post does. It allows you to build trust with the person you're commenting on. So if this is an ideal client or a potential partner and you're trying to get a call with them, you comment a few times, that's going to really sow the seeds to build trust for that relationship. And then the other one is it helps you think about things, right? Everybody needs help kind of thinking about things. It's all in our heads, how we do things, but how do we actually think about it is how we write. They say writing is thinking. So it's a good activity to do to help you with your own IP or with your own thinking. That makes you a better salesperson or a better teacher. So, 3 benefits to commenting. Do you want to talk about any methods you've run across, Nancy, that have been effective for commenting?
So, uh, the most important thing I can suggest is don't just put a like, or there are a number of little symbols you can use when you see somebody's post and you appreciate it. Stop and actually create a message, comment on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that comment should be something more than great, or I liked it, or I agree, because that's pretty lame. You actually want to have something that's more robust, something that shows that you have consumed the information, and what did you find valuable. So you can even repeat a point that you saw in that post and simply say, this was the point that I liked the most. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you can, I would also add something to it. And the reason for that is, again, you're trying to elevate your thought leadership and create a sense of who you are. And so by adding value, adding a comment to that post, you're elevating your thought leadership.
Yeah. Yep. It's got to have, I'd say, a good comment, the ideal, right? There's probably different layers of what good comments make up, but you want to add something. I like the way you put that. That's kind of a good low level, but easily achievable type of comment. Like, this is my main takeaway. And that's good, right? It shows the person who created the post, this person cares about what I wrote. But another level above that, obviously, is then when you add something. So when I've commented, for example, I'll say, and don't forget, fill in the blank. Or in my experience, fill in the blank. Or actually, I've seen something different, fill in the blank. It's okay to be contrarian on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not designed to be some platform where we just agree with everybody. You got to have a point of view. And commenting is a very, very good first step into getting consistent views on your profile, because that's what will happen. People, the person you're reaching out to, that you're commenting on, they'll look at your profile if they like what you said, and then other people who are connected to them or who see your comment in their feeds, they'll look at your profile, and all of a sudden now you start getting new profile views that come just from a commenting strategy on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I
Do
want to pick up on that theme of contrarian, because it's all right to disagree. It's okay to put in your point of view, that it may differ or be slightly different from what was the post. And another way that I enjoy commenting is to ask a question. And it could be a
mm,
softball. And what I mean by a softball is it could be a question you know can easily be answered by the poster, or it could be something that is much more meaty and substantial, in which perhaps you really do have a question and really do want to engage in a dialogue and learn more. But questions I have found to be a very effective way to comment. So as you're reading a post, form a question and
Yeah.
put that question in the comments.
Yeah, that's a fantastic one because you're not, that's not so much about your thought leadership, but it is about building a relationship with that person who commented. And I've done that too. That's a really good one, Nancy, because you can get some really good insights on the post, assuming you've read the post and you do have a legitimate question. Um, I've done that a few times, even in the last week. I'm trying to think of an example, but it's a good tactic. Now, what do you think about AI commenting stuff, Nancy, for visibility? What's your take on that?
For those of you who are listening, I don't appreciate AI comments. I think they're very vanilla, very generic. They sound like AI. I do know there are plenty of tools out there. In fact, I listened to a seminar yesterday in which there is an AI tool, and you can prompt it so it speaks in your voice and all this sort of stuff. And the truth is, it's if anyone reads multiple comments you're making, they all sound the same, and they
Hmm.
all seem to be designed and structured in the same way, because that's what AI is. AI, you give it instructions and it obeys, and it
Hmm.
doesn't think. You think it thinks. It doesn't
Doesn't
think.
think.
It
No.
just follows your instructions. And so, just as if you had an intern or new employee who you were helping to know the ropes, you're telling it what to do, and it comes out very vanilla.
I think even worse than that. I think that's a good point. Very vanilla, and you don't want vanilla because that's just noise. And I talked with a lead on Tuesday. His number one concern, he said, was there's so much noise on LinkedIn. I get bombarded with good content and bad content and everything in between. So if you're just adding to the noise, that's not going to actually help you. If you think about it, it's not actually going to help you with your objective on LinkedIn. What is your point? I think sometimes it's easy to get what's the saying? Forest through the trees. It's hard to see the forest through the trees. And if you use these AI tools to comment, yes, you're checking the box of doing tons of comments for visibility, but then you're not actually getting the people to see how you think and look at your comment as, oh, that's useful, or oh, that's a good point, right? If you showed up to a conversation at a dinner party and you used pretend you were using AI comments at a dinner party, would you probably be the most boring people at that dinner, the boring person? Yes. So if you're the most boring person on LinkedIn, how is that going to help you with your sales and your prospecting and all that? So the point isn't to do the task and check it off. The point is to do it in a sustainable way, to do volume, yes, but quality as well. And there's a balance. Everybody's got a balance. So in my case, I don't know about you, Nancy. I'd love to hear about your process. I try to get on LinkedIn every day for 10, 15 minutes. Some people say 30, some people say an hour, 10, 15 minutes, and see who I can comment on, where I can add value. And honestly, most of the time, I can't add value any very quickly. And we're going to talk about a custom feed here in a little bit about
That's
where to find that
exactly
value
where
quickly.
I was going to go, was to a custom feed, because time is limited. And if you allow LinkedIn to determine what you're going to see, it's going to be perhaps the same stuff every day, or maybe stuff that's irrelevant to you.
Yeah.
Hence, you need what's called a custom feed. If you're not familiar with this concept, this is one of the best tricks for efficiency in LinkedIn. So, Justin, you have an approach. I might have one that's slightly different, but let's start with yours.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to share. This is something that people don't realize. There's a powerful way to use LinkedIn. So let me share my screen here, and we're going to use my LinkedIn here as an example. So on LinkedIn, you have your homepage, and then you have your notifications. Now, we all assume this is the feed, and it is. This is your main feed. But if you're trying to comment 10, 15 minutes a day, you're depending on, and you're using the main feed, you're depending on the algorithm to give you content that's valuable, but that's hit or miss. So instead, I do what's called I create basically my custom feed so that when I spend my time in LinkedIn, I barely ever spend time in the feed looking at ads and looking at content that may or not be relevant for me. I look at my notifications. This is also a form of a feed. So what I've done, and you can see this might look a little different if you're new to LinkedIn or you don't use LinkedIn as a prospecting tool. This way I have it organized is probably going to look very different than what you have. A lot of people have a mix of notifications. There's work anniversaries, there's business, there's like news things in here, there's so and so did a thing. It's a bunch of junk in my opinion. So what I've done, you can actually tailor your notifications. If you go to your notifications and you click view settings, you can actually tailor it to only be posts from specific people you want. And the way you do that simply, and so that way, all that you show up eventually is everybody that you think is a great either partner, also serves your audience. So they're a collaborator or a competitor, and then somebody that's an ICP, an ideal candidate or ideal client profile. So that's all that shows up in my notifications is either people that react to my stuff and comment on my stuff or people who are posting so that I can go and quickly go into their posts. I can read Alex Boyd right here. You don't need to read everyone else's comments on a post before you write your own. And I can go be like, that looks interesting, click on it, and then easily digest it and then easily comment on it. I won't do everybody's, but I select 30 to 40 different people that I think are key players to me, to my audience. And then this is what I do. I go to their account. Let's go to Alina. She's fantastic. Um, and you click on the little, there's a little button here that shows up, but it's not showing because
Yeah, it's usually a bell, right?
it's a bell. Yeah, it gets stuck behind,
Yeah,
behind my most
and
trusted
by the
extension.
way, for those of you who might know about the bell, there's actually two flavors to the bell.
That's right.
One is kind of you get to see it periodically, and the other is when you get to see it 100%. And so if this is somebody that you want to see in your feed regularly, click the bell and click 100%.
That's right. Here it is. I removed that extension. So right here, you can see a bell
It's
top right
still the
corner.
bell. Hmm.
And then I have all notifications enabled for Elena. Otherwise, it's again, depending on the algorithm to choose what's most relevant. What does that even mean? I don't know. So I want to hear from Elena and I'll do this for 30, 40 people. And then every month or so, as I go along, and if I'm finding I'm really not able to comment on a lot of this person's stuff, or they're really not speaking the language of they're not speaking to my audience, guess what? You can click on their profile and you can click off and then you'll
Or
remove them from
partial.
your custom feed. So this is how I stay efficient with commenting on LinkedIn. I want to hear about your method, Nancy.
So I have a different technique. It's one that was introduced to me by Ed Forteau. I don't know if Ed also maybe got it from somewhere else. I mean, you know how these things go.
Mm-hmm.
And Ed, by the way, is a maven when it comes to email marketing. So check him out. And what Ed suggests, and for those of you who want it, please message me. I'll make sure you get a copy of the video that he created. He suggests that you go to the search part of LinkedIn, you focus on the word posts, and then when that comes up, now you have an opportunity to list the people's posts that you want to see.
Hmm.
And you also can set the time frame, which is daily or weekly. I like daily because that way, if they posted that day, I see it.
Yeah.
And again, that's a way to have a very custom feed. I then save that link and then I bookmark it. I go directly to that link, and today's posts from those people show up. You're limited to about 20, 25 at most people, but you can have multiple lists. So that's another
Nice.
technique.
I'll note that one. That's a neat one. I hadn't heard of that one. You always learn things new, folks. This is why we do these talks.
Yeah.
No one knows everything about LinkedIn.
There are so many shortcuts and tricks,
Yeah.
and which is why Justin, I attended a program yesterday, and I
Mhm.
keep learning, keep growing, because there's a lot going on with LinkedIn, and I want to stay on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talked about commenting as a very good, easy way to get started with getting more profile views, and the profile views then would lead to leads if you're doing it right. Let's move on to the next way to get visibility on LinkedIn, and that is posting. That's the one
Yeah.
we always think about.
That's
Um,
what we think about first, Justin. We think
mhm,
that social media equals my original contribution. But actually, that can come later. That the commenting is really, first of all, that profile gets spiffy. And then, you can comment. And then you can actually start sharing other people's material with your own. comments again. There
Yeah.
is a share button underneath somebody's post, and you can now share, and it says with your thoughts or without your thoughts. Well, do include your thoughts. Please don't bypass that idea. And it's just like when you're asking for connection request and there's a default, which is just to press connect. No, send a personal note. Add your personal comments, and bingo, you've just posted.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah, I like that. I like that you talked about commenting and how to do that more easily. That's really neat. And then I like how you also did that with posting. That's a good easy way to get into it. I never thought about it that way, but it makes sense. You could piggyback on your thought, on the thought leadership of others, by adding your own thoughts. In many ways, that's like a comment, isn't it?
Yeah, it
In
is.
fact, that reminds me, one of the ways that you can, I think LinkedIn will prompt you when this happens sometimes. You make a comment on a post,
Mhm.
and if it's good enough, LinkedIn might say, hey, I think it always does this actually. I don't think it determines if it's good enough. It'll say, do you want to turn this into a post? So you could potentially leave a comment and then also do a share with the same comment. And yeah, I think if you've got good comments, it's a good way to get started with your posting. That's a great point, Nancy.
But let's dive into an actual original post, something that's my own material as opposed to borrowing other people's, which of course is a good way to get started.
Yeah.
It needs a good hook. You know, you and I spoke just before we went on this broadcast about the hook. What's
Yeah.
going to be a hook for our audience to want to keep listening? And we decided to use writer's block and that LinkedIn stalled syndrome as our entree. But
Hmm.
you need a hook. Everyone needs a hook because without that, people keep scrolling. And it takes maybe 2, 3 seconds for someone to, pause and say, oh, wait a sec, I want to see more.
That's yeah. I'd say that's 90% of the importance of a good post.
Huge.
Because if you can't get people to pause and read, there's no point in pouring all your heart and soul into the
Yeah.
post. So the hook is what I spend the most time on. It's what we spend the most time on for our clients, even in the video sessions for our clients when we're helping them with their video content. When we ask them a question, the answer,
Yeah.
we then go back and think, okay, now what is a good hook? And then we come up with that together and we add that to the front of the video. So the hook is just like in real life, it's how you get people to pay attention to what you're going to say. In the world of psychology, it's called a pattern interrupt. Everyone's used to scrolling, that's the pattern. You need a pattern interrupt, and that is your hook, whether it's text or video, something that gets somebody interested. And that's more of an art than a science these days. But there is a resource we've put together in our agency if somebody wants access. It's 97 and a half hook ideas for your next post. If somebody wants access, put a link, put a comment, or DM me, and or Nancy. We can get that to you. I can share that through Nancy as well. If you're
That's a
like, I
great
don't even know what a good hook
resource
looks like.
because even if you don't use the exact wording in those 97 and a half ideas, they are ideas. They're going to get you
Yes.
thinking, they're going to prompt you in a direction. And again, how you get prompted and how you express yourself, even though there are other people who do what you do, is unique to you. And
Right.
hence, that's original content.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The point of these hooks that we have, these 97 and a half hooks, is not to necessarily use them verbatim. In fact, there is going to be blanks. One time, if it's a story, let's say it's a random hook, like this is how I discovered blank. Well, obviously, blank is your story. You got to fill that in, but it is exactly that, Nancy. It's inspiration, and when you get started, and I would argue, even at my stage, doing this for years, sometimes you just need a little bit of inspiration to get that, could get over
I
that blank
agree to
page
get the
syndrome we talked about.
juices flowing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So it's a good
I
resource. If you need that, DM us.
when at the college level when I was teaching my students, and this was to give a speech, and or to start a paper, to write a paper. I told them that there were several ways to start it that would get it pattern interrupt, that would get the audience to pay attention. You can ask a question, which seems to be compelling for many of us, like what's the answer, or we want to answer it. You can make a startling statement,
Hmm.
something that's contrarian, something that catches people off guard. I like to use something like stop, don't do this. That
Mm.
will, that's startling. You can use a statistic.
Hmm.
Statistics, again, a certain population, a certain style. are caught by the numbers and it's like, wow, how many? There's billion more members on LinkedIn. Well, that gets people's attention. And the last one is to use a quote.
Oh,
Again,
good.
somebody else's brainy idea that
Mhm.
becomes a hook.
Yeah, those are a lot of good ones. The question one is a typical one most of us think of. I found, yeah, I wonder as you're sharing those different hooks, I can see how the different personality styles that I know is your specialty, the different, folks that live in the world, extrovert, introvert, and driven, more reserved, how those different hooks would appeal to different folks. When I used to use a lot of statistics in an old line of business, I used to do recruitment marketing. I used a lot of statistics, and those people and as hooks, and people ate those up. Um, these days, it's less about statistics and it's more about psychology or
I would
mindset
agree.
in the world of video, and that also has a lot of success.
Yeah.
You think this, but it's actually this, right? That kind of a hook is
That
very popular for them.
contrarian stuff really is good material. So if you can say make that startling statement and catch people off guard, it could be in a good direction or could be in a negative direction. It doesn't matter,
Yeah.
but it will make the reader pause, and that's what you want them to do because there's something if you've written enough. There is a word, three dots, and the word more. And that is very important because the LinkedIn algorithm is actually measuring or monitoring how many times you and I click the see more button. That see more button is very important in terms of people then consuming the rest of your information.
Yeah.
So the first, it turns out if there's an image, 2 lines. If there's no image, 3 lines of your LinkedIn post are what's going to get someone to click the see more button. And you've probably noticed that many of us use spaces, and a full space
Yeah.
counts as a line because that then means that maybe there's only 2 lines that people are seeing in order to want to see more.
Right. And that's a fantastic signal to the algorithm. Hey, there's a lot of engagement on this post. People are clicking on it. They're not just scrolling by it. And that allows your post to then get picked up, more likely to get picked up by the algorithm and be shown to more people because
So,
that's
do
what
you
people
know
care
this
about.
statistic, Justin? I just learned it that LinkedIn impressions, when it comes to video, you have to have watched it at least 6 seconds before it counts it as an impression.
So what is the question about video?
Again, that it takes at least
Oh, for it to
seconds
count
of
an impression.
watching a
Yeah.
video before it's counted as an impression.
Yeah. LinkedIn's not
Whereas
going to
if
give
you and I
right.
click more, it's counted, we could click more and then keep going,
Right.
but it's still an impression.
It's still an impression. Yeah, you need a certain amount of time, or what we call in the world of video dwell on the video for it to count as an impression. But when it comes to posts, those are impressions, and so you're trying to maximize engagement as much as possible with your content. We got some great comments in here, and we'll get to those here in a second. Um, let's finish up with the post idea here. Um, I want to emphasize this point when you have a profile, because we're talking about multiple steps here, how to actually get sales and book calls with LinkedIn. First part is your profile. Today we're talking about getting visibility to your profile, and then we're actually going to talk next week about book more calls. We'll come back to that, and then we'll lead up to the workshop we're doing in a couple weeks from now, which is like comprehensive. You can actually get some work done with us. I don't know about you, but sometimes all that learning needs to be turned into something that's actionable. That's what that's for. But as we wrap up this idea of posting, I want to encourage you. If you're not posting, you're expecting to get people to pay attention to your message. It's not going to work for the next step, which we'll dive into next week, which is turning those one to many posts into one-on-one conversations. Because if let's say, I'll give you a great example. Let's say somebody visits your profile and you reached out to them in a DM because you're following the instructions. This is what you're supposed to do on LinkedIn, and they don't see much content at all. And then they go to a competitor of yours who also happened to DM them, and they see that that competitor has content and they can read not just what they are saying, but how they think, what they're like. If they're doing video, get to see what they're like. And which I'll ask you this: which of those two people, you or your competitor, is your buyer going to have an immediate affinity towards?
Well, it's very evident that the more you are able to put yourself forward so that they can evaluate who you are, the more likely it is for them to reach out to you. Hence,
Yeah.
when you don't have consistent uh, content over
Yeah.
time, it's useless if every now and again you post something.
Right. And the last thing about posting that matters is when you do get to that, we'll talk about this in the DMs. It gives you, if you have content you're creating from your own thinking, it gives you an excuse to share that tactfully with your network in the DMs over time and build that trust. Just kind of like how you think about an email list. If you're on somebody's email list, what are they doing? You gave them permission to email you content about whatever problem you're facing in your business. And you sometimes read them, sometimes you don't. On LinkedIn, it's the same way. It's a tactful, you have to do it tactfully. And we'll talk about this next time. But if you create content, you can then share it as give an excuse to get in touch. Hey, I just wrote this post about fill in the blank challenge. Um, maybe this will help you out, whatever, something like that. And because people aren't going to, just because you DM someone one time doesn't mean they're ready to take a call. Some people, we'll talk about that, right? But most people need time. And if they're not
That's
seeing
right.
your content in the feed, you can take the content to them in a DM. So we've got a couple questions I want to address, Nancy. Luella asks, what would be an AI comment? And are those ones you can select that pop up? Great question. Do you want to take this or would you like me to answer?
Go ahead, since I think you have an answer right now.
So LinkedIn has tested the ability to give you AI comments. I've seen a little bit of this over the last year. I don't recommend it. So ignore that. It's also tested the ability to create AI posts. I don't recommend it, right? It's the same problem. You may or may not have that functionality. LinkedIn is notorious for like trying and beta testing things with certain folks, and so other folks don't have it. I know personally, I've seen the AI comment feature in LinkedIn and the AI post feature. I've never used either one because going back to what we were talking about, you want something that's you're adding value. AI does not know how to add value. It just knows how to regurgitate. It doesn't know how to add. So, Luau, your question, what would be an AI comment? It does just that. Typically, it just regurgitates the content of the post and it doesn't add any value. So
Yeah.
you'll start seeing that. And it's tricky in the beginning. You're like, well, what's real and what's not? The more time you spend on the platform, it's like the dollar bill analogy, right? Have you ever heard of this idea? Like, how do you get really good at identifying fake bills? Is it by studying the fake bills and handling the fake bills? No, it's by handling hundreds, if not thousands, of real bills. So by the time you handle a fake bill, you're like, something's
Right.
not
The
right.
paper doesn't feel right. The color isn't quite right. There's
Yep.
something off with the printing. Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's no real good answer for how to identify AI comments, but if you're on LinkedIn long enough, you can start to see them because they typically just regurgitate the content and they don't add any value.
Yeah, this is what I have seen on my own posts, and I can tell that it's AI generated because even three, four comments on my post will have the exact same wording. They'll take a nugget from what I wrote and they will use it in the, you know, great insight and then blah, 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 whatever that thing was. So, yeah, that's how you can tell. And there's nothing that's been added. It's simply a summary, so to speak, of a point.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple minutes. Let's wrap this up and point to the next one. We've talked about optimizing your profile so viewers are more likely to want to book a call with you, but that's only part of it because today we talked about visibility, how to actually get your profile seen, get your ideas out there in the world because you have good ideas. People should hear them. And then part 3 next week, Dr. Nancy, what's that going to be all about?
So that's really about booking calls. And as you said, our posts and our comments are being seen by many, but the direct messaging, it's one to one. And we're going to talk about strategies for bringing people into the direct messaging as well as how to message people because it's like going to that cocktail party. You know, you don't want to come across as the most boring.
Yep, that's a good. Yeah, we'll use that one. It's a good one. All right. Well, thank you for being here, everybody. Join us next week, Wednesday, I believe it is,
Yep.
for the next one. We're going to talk about how to actually book the calls from one-on-one conversations on LinkedIn. I'm excited for that one. Thank you,
To your
everybody, for being here.
sales success.